So when we talk about police integrity issues and thoughts and feelings related to it, right? It requires like a little bit of identification of like problematic behaviors or things that are probably scale on a range, right? So we'll call these problems and put in parentheses potential, right? Because we don't necessarily know that they're problems, but under the right chances and circumstances, like it could happen, right? So in this case, right, when we think about like kinds of problems, right, there are going to be people who take free stuff, right? I remember I was never a police officer, but at one time I flirted with the idea of doing one, and I was a interned at Denton County Sheriff's Office. And my world was expanded by when I was on patrol with some deputies because like they got free shit all the time. Like they got discounts on drinks, they got discounts on snacks, if not free stuff, and even discounts on like tobacco products, right? Because all of them dipped. If you guys don't know what dip means, it's like if you take like a can of Skull or Copenhagen, and then put it between your cheek and gum, and then spit into a cup to get the juice out, and you have to like throw out the wad later. There's a great song called Copenhagen. What a wad of flavored chew, Copenhagen. That you should check out, right? I highly recommend it. It's very amusing. Point being, right, is that when you focus on like gratuities and kind of stuff, right, there are instances where this behavior may be seen as okay. This may be seen as acceptable, and that kind of thing, right? So where you can like give this kind of stuff. So, but is that okay? Is it because there is sort of like an understanding of a relationship that is that maybe if I give you stuff, you patrol here more often, you're neglecting other areas. Maybe you come to expect this kind of service and treatment from other places, even though they're not required to give it, nor maybe are they comfortable doing it, right? So that's an example of something that happens. Another thing to think about, right, is how investigations and complaints are handled, right? Some may say that all complaints, all investigations, must be answered. Others may not, or that you should behave and act in a certain way. Maybe that just is you shouldn't be rude. Other people would say, who cares about rudeness, right? The point being is that there's a whole list of behaviors that are listed that may be under question, right? You also think about like in the cases of like if you're called to a burglary scene or houses, like it'd be very easy to steal stuff because who's going to stop you? If you think about pulling over someone, you could easily like punch someone on the ground or use a weapon or be extra rough with someone because again, who's going to question like what you're doing, right? This could also be in terms of, if you know a criminal element and then that you are, skimming from like a trade in exchange for intelligence or cover, or something like that. So all these things, end up mattering, right? They're really, kind of interesting, right? So how do we go about assessing this, right? Well, the thing is that most agencies, unless like they're outliers, right, will have policies and procedures in place for managing this kind of behavior. They kind of provide a guideline, a bright line of what is and is not acceptable for this kind of thing, and they will say, like what officers, are required or are not required. So the expected upon duties of this section of behavior. Some of this may be good, some of this may be bad. It depends on your perspective for that kind of thing. So the other part of the thing was like, even though this will happen, right? Most places will have a semblance of like how to manage rule violations and offenders. So they'll outline and dictate what needs to happen, what does not need to happen, how investigations proceed and escalate, and we'll also have a series of punishments that are perhaps negotiated with a union or with representatives of the line officers, or set into place, right? Now the thing is, right, is that even though there are outlined prohibitions, there are two kind of realities happen, right? There are things that should happen if you follow the letter of the law, and another pathway that looks into what does happen. So what really pops up for someone. So in this case, then, between those two, like, you have diverting pathways, right? Some of that may be socialized, normalized by existing police officers. They have a sense of understanding of how the operation works. What is most likely to get chewed out for? What is not, right? If you guys ever saw, what was that movie? Inglourious Bastards. There's a scene where Brad Pitt scalped someone after they set off an agreement. And the guy then was like, "Oh, you're gonna be court-martialed, you're gonna be executed for that." And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'll probably get chewed out for that." Yeah, he'll arrest him. Like, nah, I'll just get chewed out. I've been chewed out before. Like, the way that he communicates this is that I know what I did was bad, and I know maybe something worse should happen to me, and I probably shouldn't have scalped this person. But at the same time, it's not gonna be that bad. I've been chewed out before. It's not a big deal. It kind of sucks, but it's kind of whatever, right? So these kinds of socialization factors influence an officer's perception of what is right and wrong. So what is and is not allowable. And the associated penalties. So what should or should not happen in that kind of case, right? So you have an understanding of these associated penalties and what can happen, right? This also, and what actually happens, right? It also informs your likelihood and attitude towards behavior. Because if you think, if you do something, nothing bad's going to happen, do you really give a shit? Probably not, right? So that is an important consideration to happen. So what this boils down to, that if there is high integrity, right, we believe that officers, so we have elevated integrity. So there's high integrity. This should lead to a resistance of the temptations and placing a high value on the rules, on the regulations, and believing that other people take this seriously. So if there is high integrity within a department. If there is low integrity, there's going to be permissive attitudes, more negotiating on what is or is not correct, and more negative outcomes as a result of that. So police integrity research then is trying to look at ways to assess attitudes towards police misconduct by asking people to affirm integrity, honest, forthright, upcoming behaviors, right? So that is the core of what's trying to happen here. Okay, so with that, we'll pause here and we'll continue this in the next video.